at the end of this, a child is consuming this curriculum. So we have to think from a commercialization standpoint, but then we also have to think from an in loco parentis, in the role of a parent, a pedagogical standpoint about what will happen to children if we do this, right? We can't just flip burgers and make this the ingredient because we save 5 cents. Maybe we spend $2, and that's the choice that we make as educators. That might be counter to how you'd behave in a business world, but we'll find that line between like commercialization, innovation, thinking as educators, thinking from a business standpoint.
Howdy, welcome to this week's episode of the Idea to Impact podcast. I'm your co-host, Beth Duermeyer, and this week Jack and I sit down with Doctors Lara Alicio and Matthew Etchells of CRDLA, which stands for the Center for Research and Development in Dual Language Acquisition here at A&M. With the help of licensing managers at Innovation Partner, CRDLA recently licensed a program called Stella, which was developed from decades of research conducted by Dr. Lara, Dr. Tong, and several other colleagues to a company called Frog Street, LLC. Dr. Lara and Dr. Etchells discuss how their backgrounds in private industry have shaped their perspectives on both research and commercialization. If you don't think you need to commercialize your research in order for it to have the greatest impact on the world, this episode just might change your mind. Let's get started. Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of the Idea to Impact podcast. My name is Beth Duermeyer, and I'm joined here by my co-host,
Jack Manhire.
And
Lara Alicio.
We've got Dr. Lara Alicio and Dr. Matthew Etchells. So They are with the College of Education here at Texas A&M, and they are with the Center for Research, Development, and Dual Language Acquisition. Did I get that close?
Perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
And literacy acquisition, you got it.
Literacy Act, that's what it is. Okay. So we are going to be talking to them today about all things commercialization. And like we normally do, we're going to kick it off by asking for each of you to tell us, what is your earliest memory of being an educator?
My grandfather on my mother's side was a deputy head of a school just around the corner from where we lived in Manchester. So I had a lot of that early kind of modeling of education from him and sort of ways of behaving. And he taught horticulture as well as being the deputy head of the school. And then my mother, I was a little bit troublesome as a child, shockingly. And my mother became a lunch lady, like a lunch monitor to keep an eye on me, and then continued to work in education for the next like 20, 30 years as classroom support and became like the leader and all that. So I was in classrooms, we'd have a day off school, but the primary school's still in, or my grandfather would take me to do bees in the gardens. He was a beekeeper at various schools. The main teaching centre in Manchester had a beehive as well. So he would take me there. So I'd see a lot of like professional development for teachers going on. Really funny, right? I'm like an 8-year-old, 5-year-old walking around these professional development centres, and now this is what I do for my job.
It's really cool.
So it's a real kind of, you wonder why am I passionate about what I do? And why am I interested in what I do? And why do I lean a certain way? Why do I take the road left instead of right? And then I think when you think back through your personal identity and your history, like that vein of your family that runs through generations, you're actually all going in a pretty straight line. It's not this random thing. So we've had a lot of educators. My father used to be an educator for Canon. He would train people as service engineers. So we've had it in our family. But I remember being in classrooms when I was 15, and we were doing work placement. Or my mother would say, I had a couple of days off school, and I would go in and be classroom support, which was shocking back then. Like I've got like a little woolen waistcoat on, and probably the most horrendous photos that I hope never come to light. But I remember being in classrooms from an early age and always thinking, like, I really enjoy this. Like, I like being around children. I enjoy the classroom environment, seeing a child, like the light bulbs go off in their eyes. But then also I was really interested in the administration side and the teacher side as well, of how schools work and like, what is school? Like, what is this thing? And then as I got a little bit more on in my career, I became really interested in what is international education, which is what led me here. So that was kind of where I started at sort of a young age, getting shown the ropes. And then that blossomed into where we are now.
Now, did your mom have to be the lunch lady because you were just an unruly child? Was that her introduction to the hands-on part of your education, Matt?
That's the story that was come out when I was taking any girlfriends home or anything.
We're gonna go with that.
Like I'm shanking people in the playground. I'm like, like I'm the godfather of kindergarten. Right? But it wasn't like this. I think I tripped one person. Here's the story. Her name was Lynn Price, and I tripped in the playground, and she fell over and broke her arm.
Oh, wow.
This was a game. Tripping up other children in a British playground is a legit game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we were all playing this game, and she fell over and broke her arm. And the deal we made, right, negotiations from an early age, the deal we made was that if she didn't say anything, then I would date her for 2 weeks. That was what I negotiated. And I think we started at like a year or something, and I got it down to 2 weeks. And that was my first contract negotiation.
That's pretty good, from a year to 2 weeks. Yeah. It's all fun and games until someone breaks an arm, you know.
We both left the deal happy. Yeah.
And I now understand you a lot better. And I now understand why you're so good at negotiating and doing it since we were on the playground.
There we go. I think that's the whole podcast. We're done.
Well,
I got one more question for you though, Matt, on that, and a more serious question.
Imagine you've lost the follow-up questions from that.
Well, when you have like, I had a father who was very interested in counseling and psychology, and in so many ways, because when I was younger, he would bring me on these retreats, and I'd see how he would employ these methods, and then I could see what he was doing and the instruments he used. I've kind of become jaded. Like, I know the inside baseball part of counseling and psychology. So I know when somebody's trying to counsel me. Did at any point being inside of education and knowing what was happening kind of jade you toward the whole process? Like, I know you're doing a wait time, aren't you? You're counting to 3, aren't you? Waiting for someone to answer. Or was it actually easier because of that?
Yeah, well, I'll say 2 things. So my mother's a counselor. After she finished her education, she went back, got a degree, and now she's a full-time counselor, well, retired full-time counselor. So I understand what you're saying about counseling from a parent. And then my dad being an engineer, that was the technical side. So I got the feeling side.
Gotcha.
And like reading people, understanding people, actively listening from my mother.
Right.
And then I got all that technical stuff, like how do things work, why do things work, from my father. But I do definitely approach classrooms from an analytical stance, because when I started my career, 20 plus years ago, in Kent, just outside London, I had the opportunity to start as head of drama. So I never started my career and kind of worked my way up through the ranks of schools. I started in leadership, and then had been, despite my best efforts to be in the classroom, had always been tapped for big school projects, leadership, recruitment. I'd always kind of been asked to do more than teach. So I think that technical side of it was always really intriguing to me.
That's really interesting, because as we're going to get to, and for those who are maybe just joining us, we're going to get into this this curriculum that you guys have developed, and we'll talk more about it. That it is the science infused literary program that is state of the art and leading edge, and we'll talk about why it's leading edge in a little bit. But it sounds to me, Matt, hearing your story, and we'll hear Dr. Lara's story as well, I can see these elements of your early development, and it makes sense where you're leading, how you got to this in so many different ways.
Absolutely. And when we started looking at Stella, it was all these different chunks. It was all these different phases of being done and edited. And one of the things I did when I first came into the grant was met with Dr. Lara and met with Dr. Irby many, many times. many different occasions for many hours and started to look through like what do we have and what are we doing and what can we do with it, right? Just kind of an assessment of where we're at. And that piece is something that I knew we could get done. When I looked at Stella and I saw it, and Dr. Toby and Dr. Lara laid it out, and I actually saw the lessons and I saw the pieces, that's when I was like, oh, we can finish this.
Yeah, nice.
Right, we can get this finished. We can get this out. This is something like I can do this. Like this is something we can get done. Like I can see the steps.
Right.
Getting this done. And then some of the things like adding the student workbook was then clear to me because I was saying, well, when I was in the Middle East teaching and being head of English, we had a curriculum like this. I think this piece is missing for us right now.
Gotcha.
And then Dr. Obi and Dr. Lara were coming in saying, well, what about the 21st century learning skills? And what about the financial literacy? And where are these other pieces, right? These need to be here, right? From the other stuff we were seeing and then meetings that they were in with the government and kind of what the government was saying. And then I was saying, well, if they want that to be happening in grade 8 and grade 10 and grade 5, where is that? Where's the seed for that way of doing things to grow? So it there's a great book called Emergence that talks about where ideas come from, because sometimes you think it's this eureka moment, just one person developing an idea and it's me. And academia is terrible for this because we create an environment in which one person gets the award, right? One person gets to go to conference, one person's up talking, one person gets the award, one person gets the title, right? So academia is really almost countering to this innovative, collaborative way that things come to being in the world. And Emergence talks about how ideas are actually bubbling for a long time. And the moment where you say, oh, we should do this is probably 2 years ago when you had that initial idea. Somebody said something in the corridor and it's just like, just this little seed is just growing, and 2 years later, the first bit of fruit is ready, and you go, oh, that's the idea, but it's not new in any way. So I've been with them for 2.5 years, but this is something that Dr. Toby and Dr. Lara thought about, 14 years ago. This has been a whole chunk of their career. I've just kind of come in at the end and, like press the button on the coffee maker.
But that's a great segue, right, Beth? Let's talk to Dr. Lara a little.
Yeah, we've heard, Dr. Lara, a little bit about your background, and you are from Guatemala, which Jack and I are very familiar with Guatemala. Jack, have you been to Antigua yet?
I have not been to Guatemala. I have had the Guatemalans come here, and I've spent a lot of time with the people from Guatemala, but I have yet to see the volcanoes myself. So
we're missing one of the most beautiful opportunities to be surrounded by volcanoes.
I know.
We have our homes there, so very welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to take you up on that. Yeah.
It's beautiful in Antigua. I remember staying at my hotel and I'm having my coffee and tea in the morning, and I'm just looking out the window in my patio, and there's like a volcano erupting, hundreds of miles away, but I can see it. It's right there.
That place called Antigua is pretty much well known across the world, like the eternal spring place.
Yep.
All the time you see flowers, roses.
Oh, nice.
Dr. Lara has a coffee place out there as well to make some coffee.
Oh.
No, I don't know why companies. No, just coming from farmers, we always keep this tradition to keep a little piece of land. And I have brothers who are involved in agriculture, now retired, but we always keep, let's say, 100 plants of coffee, enough to have 100 pounds coffee ready to drink. So it's that kind of tradition. But in part, the quality is because, exactly like Elizabeth says, this area is surrounded by volcanoes, the fertile of the land, and makes this unique place a unique place.
Yeah. 100 pounds of coffee, that's about what I drink every morning. So that's perfect.
Oh my Lord, you won't believe it. It's a unique place. It's a unique place. I would like to start thinking about, I had different line of motivation because we can talk it. But let's say be focused to what Jack was alluding, meaning science, the power of literacy infusing science. I remember during my early years at the National University, taking seriously my courses in physics, chemistry, biochemistry, mathematics. They had many classmates struggling understanding concepts. And they actually invited me in the afternoon to go to their homes. They offered dinner, of course. I will try to explain what the professor taught in the morning. And Sarah says, you have this unique characteristics to explain tough concepts in a very simple way. And then I start reflecting about what they were saying. And then I start thinking how wonderful it would be if I could have the opportunity to mentor the new generation of students, especially students attending elementary education, meaning elementary, middle school, and high school. So when I received my general degree in science, physics, mathematics, and also another degree in teaching, like I said last time, I was privileged by receiving my position in a beautiful rural school in the highlands of Guatemala when I had the opportunity to mentor, to teach indigenous coming from different communities the beauty of science, but specifically mathematics. And that is the most relevant line of motivation for me to think the power to write some type of material and to be able to disseminate among not only students, among everyone, you know, colleagues, people, student families. And that's pretty much my initial motivation in those subjects. Because when I was young, I was also in the lifeguard, and I started in the Pacific Ocean for maybe 10 years.
Wow.
So I had the opportunity also to lead a group of people, saying how to rescue people when they are a mile away from the ocean, from the shore, etc. So I started seeing that I had this kind of personality for being able to share. People follow me.
Right.
And to the date, still, I had this kind of things. I'm the division chair for our huge bilingual ESL programs. I developed the Center for uh, Development for the Regional Dual Language and Literacy Acquisition, with the main to make this center expanding and reaching different kind of audiences in formal and non formal education. So I continue having this kind of something like it's part of my life, the opportunity to share what I know and to provide the new generation with better tools. And I think that if something do this in a beautiful way, is the art to teach and the art to be committed to help others.
And that's just like, I think, I hope all teachers kind of have that same motivation. They want to help others. Whether that's the students, whether that's peers, other teachers. So talk to me about how, so recently, you had this curriculum that was put together and licensed, but where did that curriculum come from? How long has the center been up and running, and how far back does the research go?
And maybe we should introduce the name as well, right? The name of the curriculum and the product.
Excellent question. Number one, I had the opportunity since I was a teacher to carefully pay attention in subjects such as science, math, that many things are explained in symbolic language. I'm then wondering why Johnny, Mary don't get the algorithm to respond the problem. And then at the end, I discovered that the problem is not that they don't have the cognitive capability. It's a matter of language. They still don't understand when we say if Johnny makes $3 per hour, if he work 8 hours a day, how much he will make. They have problem understanding the terminology per week, per month, the symbol of Even though everyone knows the symbol of dollars, they still have problems understanding. So then I see, well, in part it's our own fault for not being able to associate the language concept with the meaning of the mathematical and science process, understand? And then I said, well, that would be something like we could like to pursue in the near future. America, our country is incredible competitive, meaning in order to get a good federal grant, you have to present the cream of the cream in terms of what you are proposing to convince federal officers that this is a real good investment for the country. And in other words, they expect some type of results that in our terminology are valid, are reliable, and have the power to go beyond one single setting. So in other words, they are demanding for a high level of research expectation. So this is exactly the kind of opportunity that we had, and thinking how critical it is to work as a team. To get a major grant and conduct this type of research, one or two individuals, honestly speaking, is wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a strong interdisciplinary group who knows exactly his or her role, and then other group trying to figure out the number of students, how the randomized process is going to take place, who will be controlled, who will be experimental, to pilot the curriculum that we believe has the power that at the end of a semester or a school year, kids will be able to grasp very well, not just only the content, like science, mathematics, but also understanding the literacy part, the reading and writing process.
Dr. Lara, I have a question. How did you find your like CoPIs for your grant? I mean, if it's an interdisciplinary team, how did you go out?
Yeah. Last time I was sharing that I was lucky. Everything in life is a learning process. Everything in life is a learning process. So I was lucky by coming to a private business when I discovered immediately that you alone don't do nothing. You had to have the experts talking about this. For me, it was shocking. Tomorrow we're going to invite people from Washington are coming, and you have to be prepared to hosting a nice hotels, nice restaurants. But don't say this is the hotel or this is the restaurant. You have to approach, this is the kind of restaurant that we have in Oregon. This is the kind of hotels. Which one would you like to stay so we can maybe facilitating. And then that for me was a wonderful learning process, because that's exactly what we do in grants. We need someone who deals with a randomization, expert randomized studies, expert doing longitudinal studies telling us what to do. Of course, we have the theory from our years in the doctoral program, but we need to have people who already have been on the ground. And also when we follow the RFP, response for proposals, they explicitly are expecting to use the same language that the government is asking for. So then it's up to you. You can put good players playing with you or just anyone. But at the end of the day, you get the grant because you put good players and good ideas and good proposals. Yeah. So this has been our extremely lucky. Yeah. At the beginning, like I said, 1991 when I came to Texas A&M, I was also working very close with the school districts, helping, bringing resources, bringing money, especially in these areas where it's so complicated. In Houston area, believe it or not, 74% of the program pretty much happening in Spanish, because the majority are coming from Mexico and Central America. Yeah, if we don't deal with that language, a lot is missing there. So then I saw how critical is to have this type of background, to interact with teachers, to know. So I started working with them with purposes, because I knew that someday I would need those school districts to support my effort at a higher level. So then I was lucky meeting Dr. Irby in 1991, and I started taking this opportunity to start doing kind of research, but we had to start in a school district. And then our doctoral students in the program went for Wayton. Well, she was at the beginning in the program, the Dr. HOS graduate, CNI, who I saw immediately on her, a strong background in statistics. I said, this is the kind of people that I really need for this kind of purpose. So Elizabeth, that was the way that we started building up. And then the opportunity to test our ideas with the entire support from the superintendent and the superintendent personnel.
So this took time. I mean,
exactly. That takes time. When I share to my colleagues, because they say, wow, Rafael, over $100 million. Yes, but it's for my life. I have been fishing all my life from different lines. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. Today, it's more easy for us to get grants. Just the last grant that we received last December is $80 million. But keep in mind, the same agency has been giving us before that 12, and the same agency before that 15. That's not usual at all. To one single academic unit can get, my goodness, what, $35 million. That's not usual. Because they think that all universities deserve opportunities, but they already know our job, our commitment. I don't know if I share with you in another grant, when we finished the 6 years of implementation, evaluation, etc., I still have $1 million left. Well, I have to return back this money. You say, what, you did that? Well, I cannot justify spending $1 million in 3 months, because I know that the door will be closed or continue will be open for me. So I returned the $1 million back to Washington. They were not happy because the money doesn't return to the agency. It has to be general funding. So there are many things that we are learning across the passage of time.
Yeah. So that brings up a good point because, go ahead, Matt.
This the thing I was going to say, which is really interesting, because I think one of the things that we want to think about at the university and at universities in general is, where's the next Dr. Lara going to come from? Because really, we depend on giants in the field like Dr. Lara to be pillars of funding for the university and to create revenues and income and sustainability and grant streams for the university. So if we don't have a clear, strong cohort of people coming through that are skilled, like Dr. Lara and like Dr. Irby and like Dr. Tom, where's that money going to be in 20, 30 years, right? From our perspective, there's about 70 people that then are supported financially from that grant revenue. You really have to think about like what's happening in the field with training. How do we, because we think like platypus, right? The way our organization thinks, we think like we're a platypus.
Oh, what?
We're not quite a duck. We're not quite
platypus.
Like platypus.
Perry the platypus.
Yeah.
That's what you
Perry.
I'm getting the first connection with the concept of commercialization. I told my colleagues, you guys, don't worry. We receive $15 million. Don't expect that next month we're going to receive another 10. No. It's going to. We have to wait a couple years in order to. But it will be nice also when we have the opportunity to see our top administrator deans going to Washington, talking to the director of major agencies, wondering what is the kind of assistance that we can receive. So our dean came to Washington in her normal routines, talking to officers. And one of the agencies that had provided in the past good grants, they say, those guys don't need too much research. Those guys need to commercialize their products. Those great products has to be outside in the school, impacting teachers, impacting professors, impacting families, impacting students. And then we received that message from her. I said, you guys, it's time for us to find out. And you can see, and Dr. Echo prepared also paperwork. We are actually the pioneer in our college introducing the concept of commercialization, because still people don't think that this is part of the university. I do believe should be part of the university business. Yeah. So we start practically, after doctoration, started doing this kind of connection, learning the whole process. And with your assistant, we have been able to continue moving. Our main goal is to put all our research convert in products outside, so all the schools, not just only in Texas, not just only in the nation, but beyond, can take advantage. And why I said that? Because our products are research-based products, meaning we follow scientific process. We analyze the language development from kindergarten to middle school, and we have consistent data. If you follow this and this and this and this, you will expect at the end this and this and this and this. And this is exactly what teachers and administrators are looking for. Something like is there in a consistent way and produces also the result that they would like to.
So that brings up a good point as far as, most of our listeners and our viewers are people who either have been down this path from idea to impact, or are perhaps currently on it in some location along the track, so to speak. And many folks, I think, take away the lesson from our other guests that they should be thinking about commercializing from the beginning. I'm hearing a little bit different story here. I'm hearing about decades of traditional grant-based research, and then somebody comes along and says, you've got to commercialize this. We want this out there. Was that the first time that you had thought about moving it from the traditional, get more grant money, do more research, into putting the product out there for others to use?
No, Dr. Lara is always thinking like that. Because,
okay.
And this is what I was trying to say to you about like the platypus metaphor.
Right.
That
right.
we're not just one thing. We don't just think in one way. Because what happens with commercialization is you try and commercialize something and you use your academic knowledge, like use your PhD,
right,
to write the curriculum or design professional development or make the thing that you've made. And once you've got it, you then don't have the skill set to do anything with it because you're not a business person, right? You don't have an MBA, you haven't worked in business for 20 years. So you have all these barriers and roadblocks of getting the project over the line and to market. The things that Dr. Lara has, much more than me, and I have to a certain extent, is because we've worked in business or we've worked in industry. We're not just like the otter, right? The platypus should be an otter, but then somebody sticks a duck into it as well. So we're not just one thing. When we hit that roadblock, we just kind of switch gears, almost like finding that other gear in your car. And then we move into, okay, now we need to think like business people. So say in my role, I'll think like a business person. I'll read contracts and I'll put like a lawyer's hat on, read this as a policy document, as a legal document. And then I might, an hour later, be writing an article that's going to go out through the college or go out nationally like we've just had happen. And then an hour later, I'm thinking like an educator trying to work on some curriculum. And then I'll go to a meeting and do negotiations. So we're not just one thing. And both Dr. Lara, Dr. Irby, Dr. Collin, they all think in this multifaceted way. And here's the comment I was going to make of where are universities thinking like this, right? If we're not having consulting classes and like international education classes and integrating some of that MBA stuff. And I think at A&M now we do have a PhD where you start in like the Bush School on policy, and then you come to the College of Education for your PhD.
Oh, interesting.
But there needs to be like that route from Mays as well in this like, collaboration, like crossover in the TV series, right? There's this crossover between Mays Business School and the College of Education, because we need a whole lot of people coming in that can write grants, have a business-minded approach to things, but don't come in like a butcher, right? Because these are children. So you can't come in as this is a widget, I'm going to sell 10 million, and you don't care about like what the consumer's getting on the desk down the pipeline. At the end of this, a child is consuming this curriculum. So we have to think from a commercialization standpoint, but then we also have to think from an in loco parentis in the role of a parent, a pedagogical standpoint about what will happen to children if we do this, right? We can't just flip burgers and make this the ingredient because we save 5 cents. Maybe we spend $2. And that's the choice that we make as educators. That might be counter to how you'd behave in a business world. But we'll find that line between like commercialization, innovation, thinking as educators, thinking from a business standpoint. And moreover, if we were to go entirely and think like a business, we've then pushed ourselves into a space which is counter to the mission and vision of a land grant institution. And we've had this conversation, you know, like it would be great to have something where you make a ton of money. Good, bully for you. Then what do you do with it? Put it in a room and look at it, right? When we have all that money, we're not for profit. So every dollar you make has to come back, right? And especially with grants, the IDCs, the whole chunk of that money is going to the university. And when we commercialize and things like that, we also have pots of money that go to different places in the university to support the university as a whole, and that's our role here. But what I would say is when people are trying to innovate and trying to commercialize, they really need to think about, you know, am I the shape of the animal? Am I the right animal coming into this? That I have all the tools and all the skill sets that I need, and then you know really clearly, it's crystal clear who your PIs need to be, what colleges you need to reach out to, what officers can you get involved with, right? Who do you need to talk to? Like, we could not have proceeded without coming to innovation partners, without talking to TTC, right? Without attending a whole lot of like webinars and lectures on innovation and commercialization. Because getting your license, when you have the license to commercialize and you turn it over, there's no instructions on the back.
Right.
So it's not like an IKEA thing where you're putting like a bed together, right? So you have to still figure this stuff out, and it takes a long time. But what we've done, because we're the icebreaker on innovation for the College of Education, what we've done is as we've moved through this process, we've gone through all these learning curves that should make the next time we do this easier for us. And we're in the process with Let's Talk Science of doing exactly the same thing as we did with Stella, right? We're in the process of innovation again and commercialization again with lots of products and services that we'll talk about at the end, I believe. But the second thing is that those who come after us should have an easier road, because now we know the process and they can ask us about it. They can ask you about it. We've all gone through, like all of us and Daniel and Bob and everybody right at the university. We've all gone through this understanding now. Even Frog Street, our partner, Ron Chase, now understands almost the language we need to use in conversation so that we can get this done. Because he's talking like a publisher. We're talking like academics, like 80% academic, 20% business. Another office is speaking from a legal policy side. Another office like yourselves is speaking from like an innovation, commercialization side. So as Dr. Lara said, if we're in dual language, our dual language is academics and that commercialization innovation talk. And we can't just go to the government and speak like classroom teachers because we're misaligned in our conversation. And then we can't go from a government meeting and meet with a publisher and talk about the needs of grants and things like that. A publisher is not going to hear all of that conversation. So it's really been that platypus of like, who do you need to be in this space to communicate and get things done with these people?
So you're a really good,
piece.
You're a really good teacher, Matt. Good expositor. that was really well described, and in a way that I probably haven't heard it before. And there is so much to unpack in what you just said, and maybe we can try to unpack some of it in the show today. But that's very rich statement. And I want to go back to just one of the things in that large box there. And one of them is I have heard from some of our faculty and our researchers that their knee-jerk reaction, I should say, to the word commercialization is, but I don't want to sully my pure research, the stuff that I'm passionate about, that I've committed my life to, that maybe affects people, and it could be in a negative way if it's misused. I don't want to do that. Because getting in the business world is going to be all about saving that last nickel, right? Saving that last penny. And you made the comment that there is this balance, this line, where you, as in this case, educators, I'll just say any technician on the technical academic side, has to meet with the business side, but the business side doesn't consume the academic side. You don't just take the back seat and the CEO goes and does whatever they want with the product. And thinking about those things up front, this is what I got from that part of the statement, is critical to put that team together, or else you might actually be fighting that battle. Is that half right?
Yes,
yeah, and you got to think about what kind of farmer you want to be, right? Think of it like farming. You have to think about what kind of farmer you want to be. If you're in pastoral farming and you've got a field of cows, and then you walk into HEB and you're going to cry for 5 minutes in front of the steaks, because that's your baby, right? Then don't
Right.
be a cow farmer.
Right. Right.
It's real simple. Go into sell flowers, make trees, make coffee,
yeah.
like something more sustainable.
Let
You
me
can
share what
digest
I
in
think.
terms of what you're doing.
Dr. Lara, good.
I think that in the commercialization, everybody could be a winner or everybody could be a loser. It depends how we understand our role. We, in our career, when we get our first rank, which is an assistant professor tenure,
Right.
we're looking to secure tenure as associate level. Yeah. But when we continue thinking, but I would like to become a full professor, and then I want to read what is the criteria. The criteria, among other things, is that you have to be a national known researcher. National could be through books, could be through your own research. There are multiple opportunities.
Right.
Okay. And then I say to myself, what if I part of a special book that is implementing in kindergarten schools in America? And then we did it. And that was a company. They sold in Texas $29 million in copies. Yeah. But for me, I got the recognition that my contribution reached a national level. Here, I'm telling my colleagues and administrators that we need to figure out effective way to compensate faculty for doing this type of thing, because it's easy for me to say, Jack, I'm sorry, that doesn't have to deal with me. What conversation has to do with me? This is the typical people are others who are involved in business. But your reaction was exactly correct, business, people in education. But we have to make an effort to see how we together can contribute. So at the end of the day, everyone is a winner.
Right.
That's in my personal point too.
The biggest piece, Jack, that I see with academics is that they're really protective of what they've done. And it's almost a duplicity to their thinking. They're really protective of their ideas and their intellectual property, but then also they want everybody to use it.
Right.
So it creates an interesting space for almost like, how do you wrestle that out of their hands in a way that they can let go of it. For us, our thinking, my thinking and Dr. Lara's thinking is that we want to get this idea out the door because we've got 50 more. And what I would say to the folks that are kind of like holding on to that one bit of curriculum or that one idea or that one PD or that one book they're trying to write and they're going to do it for the next 10 years, you've got more ideas, you just don't know it. And with Dr. Lara, the pre-K curriculum that they wrote was the first of its type, the one that was talking about the $29 million. That was the first of its type. So for you now in this webinar, it feels like Stella is the beginning, the iteration of this thing. But really, this is a whole series of curriculum innovation from Dr. Lara and Dr. Irby and Cindy Guerrero and Dr. Tong. So it looks like the first time, but it's just the first time for you, right?
Gotcha.
And in Dr. Lara's mind, it's almost like this huge bookshelf. And he's got like idea 372 is Stella. And there's a cathedral of books in there, right? Ready ideas that are the next things that we can do. So what we need to do with folks like Dr. Lara is just get as many of these ideas on the table and make them exist in as much time as we can use, right? Because this, for me personally, I'm not just trying to big up my boss. This is a once in a generation academic, right? This is a once in a generation intellectual that can think about these things and scale these things. There's not 50 Dr. Laras in the College of Education waiting to move into dual language. Right. So really, we have an ethical responsibility to the state and to the country to bring these ideas into existence as quickly as possible. So that sense of urgency, that sense of time, like, let's not just shoot the breeze. We need to use these minutes now. Right. Like, let's walk and talk. Right. With all the ideas that we have, we always have this sense of like sands running through the hourglass. And we've got to move. Right. We've got to move forward.
Wouldn't some people say that, like, you're doing research or publishing, that's getting it out there? Some people would argue like that's enough. And I think a lot of people are worried that if they do try to commercialize it, that like A&M is going to take it away. That, if I pursue this, then what's the point? A&M will just take it from me because, A&M, it's A&M's ideas, which is a myth. I mean, that's not what happens. You guys know that firsthand.
Yeah, we get it.
But why take it to commercialization? Why not just stop at publishing and being known for something? Because a lot of times faculty, you're not getting any type of credit for commercializing something. That's not typically part of the tenure checklist, right?
It's not on the radar
that
It's not on the radar.
That's Albert Einstein wrote papers. He didn't, make ways of using the general theory of relativity. So I'll leave that to somebody else. Let me get the idea out there, right? Yeah.
Well, I say for the publication side, it's really easy.
Yeah.
We write stuff for teachers in classrooms and for school leaders. We know what teachers get paid in the US. Are you telling me that
remember this,
reading a publication?
I don't know. It's a matter of ideology. It's a matter of commitment. It's a matter of philosophy. It's a matter of I don't know what. But for us to be where we are, we have to say thank you for our sponsor institution, the federal government. Those $100 million never ever came from Rafael's pocket. The federal government would say, "You guys, you're wrong." From people of the United States who make possible through taxes to provide these opportunities. So then becomes an issue that I feel extremely like after going to the church to know that my contribution are being used in schools. Yeah, I don't know. I have a decent salary here at Texas A&M, enough for me to continue living, and I feel extremely happy to know that our contribution will reach different places. Texas A&M will get some money, the system some money, the college some money, the department some money. Everyone is going to get something. But the most important is to be sure that this product of education is going to reach people who need this opportunity to be better prepared. I know, Elizabeth, I'm with you, immediately with you. But again, to conduct this type of research that makes possible at the end this quality product is extremely expensive, Nobody in our college talk in the way that we talk, $100 million. Yeah, I know it's all our life. But here, our result right now, again, that's December, $8 million. And Washington said, congratulations, you were the only university in the United States that was recommended for this type of funding. The other six, were private business. I'm sending the message. You are not running in the correct way, you will be behind.
Join us next week for part 2 of this discussion with Dr. Lara and Dr. Etchels, where we will continue to talk about the process that they went through to help commercialize their curriculum into what is now called Stella with the company Frog Street. We'll see you next week.